I'm Brandon Amoroso, and this is the D2Z podcast, building and growing your business from a Gen Z perspective. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to D2Z, a podcast about using the Gen Z mindset to grow your business. I'm Gen Z entrepreneur Brandon Amoroso, founder and CEO of e-com agency Electric Marketing. And today I'm lucky enough to be talking with Cameron Faist, Director of E-commerce at Aura Bora. Cameron's here to talk with us about e-commerce, CPG marketing in the beverage space, and really wherever else the conversation goes. Thanks for coming on, Cameron.
Appreciate you having me. Looking forward to it today.
So before we dive in, could you just give everybody a quick background on your start in the business, and how you've gotten to this point today with Aura Bora?
Yeah, I've been in the natural food space and food and bev for about 15 years now. Gosh, saying that out loud really dates myself. So I was lucky enough to get involved in the space quite early on. And my story really evolves around my health and why I got into that space. So I have an autoimmune disease called Crohn's, and where I really left looking at how drugs could help me get through that, I've looked at how food can be healing as well. So as a result of that, I've always tried to join brands in the food and beverage space that are helping others live more sustainable and better lives with better food options.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in terms of like your day-to-day responsibilities at Aura Bora, then what does that look like?
Yeah, as a director of e-commerce and growth, I wear many hats, as most people do in the startups, but my main role is really all things digital, including sales, marketing, operations, and P&L management. So what we like to say is that if you buy anything on the internet, in terms of purchasing a can of sparkling water of Aura Bora, it probably has something to do with that. So that covers all of our D2C business from our Shopify store and our Amazon marketplace, as well as all of the alternative marketplaces like GoPuff or DoorDash, et cetera.
Are you starting to see like more penetration outside of Shopify and Amazon in terms of sales for you guys?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. I think making Aura Bora as accessible as possible across all of those alternative marketplaces has been a big challenge, but also a big opportunity for us as well, and really exploring all of them. I feel like they pop up left and right. There's regional players, there's national players, et cetera. So we try and keep an ear to the ground to understand where they're coming in, and also working with our other partners to understand what's working and what's not. There's a lot of setup to get those going, and some of them might not be worth it, but we like to keep an eye out to see what's working and what's not, and hopefully be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, each one really requires a completely individual like process. There's no like one way to just plug in like you can with Shopify and the more like traditional online sales channels.
Absolutely. Assortment has been a big challenge in terms of understanding which flavors to place on which channels, and then being able to look at pricing strategies, et cetera. So it's been fun. I love challenges. I love looking at new opportunities for the business. So we're continuing to explore those.
Is there any way to sort of stitch together the interaction that your customers are having then with Aura Bora across all of these disparate properties? Because like if I'm buying from your website, I'm buying from Amazon, I'm buying from GoPuff, like is there any way for you to know that me, like Brandon, I am a consumer of you in 3 different places?
Yeah, if you've got a solution for that, I've got a check to write you as an investor for sure. It's a very good question to ask. It's been a challenge, right? I think what we do is do our best to capture as much zero-party data as we can through Shopify. And most of that comes through post-purchase surveys, both from your first purchase and then your subsequent purchases as well. Yep. And I think really asking the right questions about where did you discover our brand? What brought you to the website today? What's going to bring you back in the future? Or what other places have you purchased Aura Bora? Where else would you like to see Aura Bora? So we really rely on asking the right questions of our consumers to understand what other marketplaces and channels they're discovering the brand and shopping the brand and returning to the brand.
Yeah, I love your lead capture pop-up on your website.
It's a fun one.
So with those 3 questions that you have there, are you like, do you have 8 different flows depending on what's happening there, or do you just have like conditional blocks that are going to change based off of the responses?
Yeah, that one's just more of a branding opportunity for us right from the get-go for first users. Okay. So we're capturing all of that data, I think, in the very near future as we look to build more of our brand-led automation. Right now, it's very conversion-based automation. We'll definitely take more advantage of understanding, which creature is more aligned with which user or whatever it might be in terms of the answers to those questions.
Yeah. Do you have like any insight? Like, did that reduce your opt-in rate or
Mm.
did it increase it?
Yeah, great question. It crushed my hypothesis. So I certainly thought that asking more questions of a user that's simply there to either learn more about the brand or convert, asking them more questions would then drop capture rate, but it actually increased. So I think part of the brand storytelling is a very, very crucial part of us at Aura Bora. And I think being able to inject that into different bits and pieces, even in something super simple that's mainly not branded, right? Like you want 15% fill out the form here, but I think putting a little bit of fun and branding behind it has really led us to continuing that conversation with our consumers later on in the funnel.
I think, like for me at least, it sort of piques my interest. Like I'm like, what's going to happen now that I'm giving you this data, and that I'm also telling you like what my favorite Wonka is. So I could see how some people would be more readily like able to give that information.
Yeah.
Are you like exploring SMS at all?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the new things that we're doing is looking to educate users on the use cases of Aura Bora. So that's introducing both a mocktail and a cocktail environment. So we have a new recipe page on the website, and we leaned into our SMS strategy to really promote that. So a few months ago, we sent out a broad text to our community saying, which one of these recipes would you like to learn more about, depending on your lifestyle? So do you want the mocktail version or do you want the cocktail version?
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, we've now sent out and structured a campaign that every week we send out a new cocktail and a mocktail from our creators, and then we're able to repurpose that on social media as well. So the engagement has been great. For us, it's just a true value add to our consumers. There's no strong CTA to purchase. There's no strong CTA to upsell, cross-sell. Through our SMS strategy, we're really just looking to provide value to our customers.
That's awesome. So often I feel like brands are too transactional and don't think about like the long-term benefits of investing in some sort of a content and education experience.
Yeah.
Do you find like for your product, are people using it beyond just like drinking it? So like I'm a sparkling water addict, so I'm very familiar with it, but I usually just drink it. I don't think of it as like a mixologist type of deal. Do you know how many people are actually using it in recipes?
Yeah, part of that post-purchase survey strategy is finding out what is the use case of Aura Bora. So we ask it in a fun, whimsical way, as we do with all of our copy. And the line of questioning is which one of these four best would your friends best describe you as? And one of those is someone that would enjoy being at a party, whether they have a drink in their hand or not. And that to us is really understanding kind of the low alc or no alc use case of our product. And then we also have a whole like party scene as well of people that might be the head of household and the entertainer, where they're bringing Aura Bora to the dinner party as a fun mixer for cocktails as well. So yeah, it's absolutely incredible to see the use cases of Aura Bora across just the standard, almost commoditized at this point category of sparkling water. Our thing that we like to share is that you absolutely sip on a can of Aura Bora. You do not chug it like a French named sparkling water. So we want people to enjoy all of the herbs, fruits, and flowers that we spend a lot of time sourcing ingredients for Aura Bora.
I've had to cut down on my sparkling water, especially like during the day. I'll be on a call or I'll be doing a podcast. I'm like, oh my goodness, like I can feel it. I've had too much bubbles today.
Yeah.
So somebody can come up with a sparkling water product that doesn't do that to me, I will be the number one fan.
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate yourself in an industry that, as you said, is relatively commoditized?
Really good question. Our core differentiation is really our flavor offerings and then the fun, whimsical branding that we have behind Aura Bora. So our users really love, they call it artwork, which we're flattered by. Our creative team does an amazing job with all of the creatures and the landscapes that you see on our can art. So that's really our core differentiation, is just the creativity behind the brand. And then the second value proposition is really the unique flavors. So we certainly create an R&D and develop citrus-like flavors that you would see from other sparkling water brands, but we really try and make them unique. So I've been drinking lately what we call lime cardamom. Might be able to see here for those that are watching. So this is our unique take on a very popular sparkling water flavor of lemon lime. Or we have elderflower grapefruit that has made it back to the website. That was a limited edition flavor a while ago, and now it's part of our what we call forever flavors. That's our take on a very popular flavor of pamplemousse from a French named sparkling water brand. So our core differentiation is really the uniqueness of our flavors and the uniqueness of our brand.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to have to try one of these now that the full pitch. So being in the D2C sort of consumable space for so long, I think just going even beyond beverages, are there any like best practices or pitfalls as well that you've picked up along your way over the past 15 years?
Good question. Wow. Best practices, I think, would be don't be afraid to ask your users what they're thinking and what they want. I think so much as digital marketers, we sometimes guess or we sometimes presume what our users want. And we've really driven the brand most recently with a crowdsourced flavor to really help us understand what they want, and then we will build it or make it for that matter. I think that's the biggest lesson that I've learned over time, is that so much of a marketing strategy can be a guess or your best guesstimate of what an addressable market is looking for. But in my experience, the best way to understand that is really build your community and then ask what they want from you as a brand, and then build the product or the service towards that. That's really been my biggest learning over the years.
It's amazing how much feedback customers will give to a brand. Like,
it is pretty astonishing.
When we first started implementing post-purchase surveys with our clients, I figured, maybe 25%, 30% of people will even answer this, and it's probably going to be worthless. But it's like 70% of people will answer it. Maybe it's because I would never give my information, but
right.
There's obviously the benefit of asking those questions that could be used for like segmentation and then personalization and like your email and SMS strategy. But I kind of like the ones that are a little bit more open-ended, that you have to comb through and get like the open-ended free-form feedback from the customers of how could the brand be supporting them more? What sort of like new products would you look at? I mean, it basically takes away any need for a product development team other than like just harnessing the power of your existing customer base. And then knowing like, hey, you have that email and SMS list now to message right when it launches, or even pre-launch to get pre-orders in the door to fund your actual production. I mean, it's just sort of like a flywheel effect.
Yeah, my favorite part of going through those surveys is absolutely coming through, to your point, the other responses, right? So as everyone should that's listening to this podcast, do post-purchase surveys. One of the questions you should have is, how did you discover the brand? First, discover the brand.
Yeah.
And to us, that's kind of a catch-all for a few different things. One, it's really understanding where our users are coming from that we know of. We certainly have performance marketing channels, et cetera. But we get some things in those other categories that are either just fun and creative, knowing that we align with our consumers' creativity, but also as a catch-all for, hey, there's something going on in the marketplace that might be super organic. And we got 100 people to the website today that they saw us on television spot A or YouTube native ad B or whatever that might be. And it's a great opportunity for us to just have eyes and ears from our consumers to understand where they're discovering the brand from an organic standpoint as well.
Yeah, and I really appreciate how the post-purchase surveys are getting more sophisticated in that. Like, you can target only first-time customers to ask that "how did you hear about us" question.
Right.
Well, you're not like hammering the same person over and over again with "how did you hear about us" when you already know that. And then you can continue to build on your zero-party data aggregation efforts at order number 2, order number 3, and so on. But we even see that, like, we had we were promoting a MailChimp to Klaviyo migration with Klaviyo, and the most success that we had with it was somebody like picked it up and then put it into some Facebook group somewhere with a bunch of CPG marketers or something like that. And the only reason we knew that is because in the form that they were filling out, everybody was like, "You're in this Facebook group thing." And I was like, wow, like that was really interesting. So without having that that feedback loop, you'd have no idea.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing that we've learned over the last 30 days after implementing the post-purchase survey from returning customers is that the number one reason that people are coming back to the site is to find new flavors, not to shop new flavors, but to find new flavors. I thought that to be very interesting. So we take that to the R&D team and the product team and say, look, our consumers are looking for a higher cadence of new flavor drops. So we're going back to the drawing board, literally and figuratively, to really understand how quickly we can put out new flavors based on that feedback. So it's been really powerful for us to really, just back to your original question, just asking our consumers, and what we've learned from that has been really amazing.
Well, it sounds like you've really been able to tap into the discovery and experience aspect of your brand and what that offers, and is a crucial component of how you differentiate from others.
Absolutely. It's really helped us figure out the entire funnel experience too, across all channels, right? So discovered you here, but I was brought to the website from this channel today, and I came back to the website 5 or 6 days later because of this. And with so much going on with iOS, and as we broaden our marketing mix and as we get deeper into those channels that we know are working, it's great to just be able to step back a little bit and understand where people are coming from and how they're engaging with the site and the brand from their own point of view, and not rely on any of these platforms.
Yeah. What are you doing post iOS to address some of the sort of issues and changes that have arisen from that?
Yeah, shout out to Northbeam. Northbeam has been our savior. We put that on the store 45 days ago now.
Okay.
And being able to integrate all of our inbound clicks, which was quite the pain in the neck to set up, but now well worth it now that we're 45 days in and looking at the attribution modeling there. So to answer your question directly, post iOS, we really looked at a top of funnel strategy, bringing qualified leads and clicks into the site, and then using stronger remarketing with the channels that we know based on that Northbeam data that are producing the conversions for us. So pre-iOS, it was really a direct response model where, hey, this is Aura Bora, this is our story, come to a landing page and please purchase within a 7-day window, pretty please. And now we're looking at, a much longer attribution window with better storytelling and more brand first approach. And then based on the success of our CRM and our owned media channels, we've really made a seismic shift going from a direct response model to a cost per lead. So we're getting people into landing pages from performance marketing channels, offering them a free sample of a 6-pack of our product, which is normally shipped as a 12-pack. And in exchange for that, we're doing a pre-purchase survey, capturing an email, of course, and then just having our customers cover the $5 in shipping. And we've seen a huge response from that. So click-through rates are up, engagements on platforms are up, and then our lead gen tools are up. So we make those lookalike audiences and then just send those back into the algorithms. So kind of as the tide rises, all the boats rise, as they say, and we've definitely seen that from that bigger shift post iOS.
Are your retention rates with that cohort that you're bringing in similar or weaker compared to your historical customer base?
Great question. Maybe we can do a follow-up podcast in a few months. We just launched that about 30 days ago. I'm being coy with you, but that is certainly the hope. We expect, and that we truly entrust in placing the bet on the brand, that once you've tasted and experienced and you've sipped on Aura Bora and not chugged it, that you'll understand the value proposition. Look, we have a very price sensitive consumer, right? We're almost $3 shipped to your door. So we know that we are uber premium in the category, but we're really entrusting that once you taste it, once you experience it, that you'll want to come back and convert. So we have a benchmark there that we would like to hit that helps all of our unit economics make sense, but time will only tell.
What tools are you using for tracking retention and lifetime value?
Good question. All of them. I'm a self-proclaimed data nerd. So the biggest tool that we use is Dacity.
Okay.
So Dacity is an amazing tool to have us look at all different marketplaces and all sources of data, and then customize some looker profiles and dashboards to be able to answer very specific questions. So an example of that is we've created a dashboard with Dacity that shows the first purchase being that free sample, what channel they came in to convert to that, and then what is your second purchase after that, including average order value, time between purchase, et cetera. So it's been a really, really powerful tool for us to see how that campaign is going on. So Audacity is a big one in our tech stack. Northbeam, I mentioned them. Phenomenal tool to be able to really understand what's bringing in top of funnel clicks, what's producing conversions out of MoFu and BoFu, and how does the entire channel strategy that you have in place really contribute to sales and conversions. And looking at the different attribution modeling is absolutely insane to see the difference. We use Peel Analytics and Lifetimely to look at cohort analytics for LTV by segment, by first order SKU, by month, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
And then the oldies and the goodies like Google Analytics and the like. But yeah, really looking at the entire suite that is available to us D2C marketers these days to really understand our consumers the best that we can.
I can't wait to have to do all those analytics transitions for GA.
Yeah, we've put it off a little bit, but every time I log in, I certainly see that big banner that we need to make that transition. Absolutely.
Yeah, I got that email last week, and it was like, you need to do this by 2023, or you're just basically we're deprecating it entirely. I'm like, awesome. And Shopify doesn't even support the new one, so
right.
that'll be awesome. No, Lifetime.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how that pans out.
They're essential. I mean, they're essential for us to be able to work with any of the brands that we partner with, because I think the biggest thing that differentiates us is being going beyond just the email and SMS platform and looking at the actual retention data, the customer journey post first purchase. Like, okay, you bought this first. Now, what does the second product look like in your discovery? What is the reorder window? How can we frame that around like our replenishment flows and our win back flows? It's way more powerful if you have that sort of overall life cycle sort of approach to things, as opposed to just being like in platform only executing on one thing.
Yeah, I love that that's become more accessible for startups as well, not just for growth brands like ourselves or enterprise brands. I mean, you can get Lifetimely on your store and get set up pretty quickly. You can kind of move to the Maserati of things with, Peel and the Audacities of the world and Northbeam as well. But I love how accessible that is for almost everyone now for the cost that they're offering.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like the amount beyond the tools themselves, the amount of resources online for anybody to just sort of figure it out. I mean, I was chatting with Malomo earlier today on their podcast, and I was explaining to them that like literally everything that Electric does was just Googled or YouTubed at one point. And that is the culmination of the last like 3 years of Googling and YouTubing. So you can literally learn anything online.
Absolutely.
And just do it. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not just you running around and making all these things happen for Aura Bora.
No, certainly not. Absolutely not, in fact.
Your team, how have you over the course of your career like gone about building out your teams? What do you look for? Is there anything like tips or tricks for founders that are listening to this who are thinking, or other growth marketers who are thinking about like, I need to get some help? How should they be doing that?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to really understand where your brand is in its life cycle. Are you new, emerging, growth phase, hyper growth phase, whatever that might be? And then when looking at team development, really having that conversation internally around what the opportunities are for people ops, and then of course resources to pay them. So that then leads to, do we externalize some parts of the business? Do we internalize? Do we have a hybrid model? Whatever that might be. So for me, had the absolute fortune to work with a variety of different brands and a variety of different stages. So I've been able to manage all three of those models: a fully outsourced model, fully in-sourced model, and a hybrid. But I think that's really crucial to understand. If you're in hyper growth mode and you're going to be changing things every month based on input or data that you're seeing, highly recommend an outsourced model, and then being able to leverage the expertise of an agency like you all to say, hey, I'm seeing this, can we make this adjustment? And then as you get out of that hyper growth phase and just looking at maybe, a 10, 20% growth rate, then my recommendation is always to start looking at bringing some of that in-house and really looking at, rather than brands that start with generalists, they grow with specialists. So as you get to that growth phase, really trying to onboard and bring in-house those growth specialists by whatever channel that it might be. That's been my experience, at least.
Yeah, I feel like, there's obviously pros and cons to both. For me, like the agency, you get exposure to so many different use cases and applications and brands, which is invaluable. But at the same time, like I've never gotten to go as deep in a Klaviyo account as I'd want to if I was working at a brand myself.
Right.
So like there's definitely the pros of having that internal team member who can just live, eat, sleep, and breathe the brand, even though every agency will say we're just like an employee. It's like, no, you're not. You're an agency. No, I say it all the time too, but
yeah, that's very forthcoming of you. I can certainly, having managed and work with many agencies, I can certainly appreciate that sentence.
There's definitely there's an attempt, but you just can't replicate having that team member 24/7 around the clock.
Yeah.
Being a specialist in that brand.
But I think there's a lot of value in outsourcing it as well, especially in the early days of saying that, the fractionalized cost that you would have of an agency gets you maybe 2 or 3 creative minds at a fraction of the time, but that empowers more creativity into the brand rather than just one person really driving strategy. In my experience, those have been the best models from the beginning, to have, as ironic as it sounds, as many cooks in the kitchen that you can afford early on to really drive the strategy and the tactics. And then as you narrow that down and hone that in, then like I said before, starting to bring in specialists into the brand in-house.
Yeah, I think the value we can provide brands is like that subject matter expertise within the Shopify ecosystem, and just going super, super deep with what I look at as like the top 10, top 15 best in class tools in the ecosystem, and knowing how they all integrate with one another. And you can create these cohesive customer experiences like in a Klaviyo or in an Attentive or whatever it may be. That, like, I think that's the biggest value prop that you could bring as an agency. There's no way that if you're like in-house that you could get the exposure and the level of like depth, the beta programs, everything that's going on there that you do when you have these like really tight technology and agency partnerships.
Yeah. There's an incredible amount of value in paying someone to tell you what doesn't work so that you don't have to try it out and see it fail. I think that's the speed to market piece, right? Like if you've got, if you're early on and you've got the idea or you're just about to launch a product, absolutely externalize those subject matter experts, because it's a hit the ground running kind of mentality without having to coach someone up or really educate them on what that is based on your own personal knowledge. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I'm all about testing, but there's some things that are just table stakes best practices. And so there's no reason to A/B test certain things, because you just know, and some of them are even just common sense. If you just think about it, it's like, like obviously we should be doing this. So just do it. Don't overanalyze it or think about it too much. I have one sort of off the rails question here, but like your branding is so pristine and everything just looks off. But does that stifle speed at all? Because I've run into some sort of situations in the past where like brand is so brand oriented, if that makes sense. Like you just can't get anything out the door, and it becomes a little bit painful.
Yeah, first and foremost, I have zero to do with the creativity, and I'm extremely fortunate to be part of a brand that is so rooted in creativity, and that's from our founders, Paul and Maddie, and the amazing creative team behind them, including this amazing background that I have behind me. The question and the question that you ask is a really good one, and the answer is yes. But I think that if from the beginning the entire team understands that our true north is really brand led and maybe not just conversion led or just growth led, that it really sets the precedent for all members of the team and through all parts of the organization that creative and brand is first. And I think that just sets the reality of a project that might be, a 7-day project takes 30 days. But when you look at the results of when you try and rush through things like that, when you're a brand led company, and when you actually take the time to think about them and understand how those different pieces of creative are working across all different channels, the results are there. And we've been caught in that for sure. It's a really good question to ask, where there have been things that have not been done because they're stifled by the creative process. And maybe they're time sensitive, they're campaign based or event based. And we've missed out on those opportunities. And we've learned from that and certainly looked at optimizing our processes. And in this case, too many cooks in the kitchen is a bad thing. and really looked at, the right team members in the right seats to be able to execute against that. So yeah, it's a really good question to ask. It's certainly a challenge, I would think, from the different brands that I've been humbled to be a part of. And with Aura Bora being so brand and creative led, you just have to set up the right processes in place and set the right expectations to make sure that there's ample time to be able to execute against that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the biggest challenge for an agency or consultant is hopping in and trying to get that like within a day or a week. Like we have some clients where we've been working with them for like 6 months. And so we're super comfortable with it. It's just so easy. But obviously, like it's not how it's going to be in the first 3 days or the first week. And so we even started taking approaches where like, we just do strategy for the first month or 2 months before we even think about touching your creative or copy. Because like it's just, if you're that brand oriented, it's an evolving learning process. You can't just like all of a sudden snap your fingers and be a part of it.
I think it's really understanding too, making sure that the right people are in the right positions. So we're extremely fortunate that our co-founder, Maddie, is our creative director. And her role, amongst many other things, is really looking at every piece of outbound content, whether that might be a very basic SMS, a extremely convoluted email campaign, an entire performance marketing ad content play on Facebook or Instagram, or even the smallest of things of, for example, setting up our new retail locator that we just launched on the website a few weeks ago, of making sure it's the right icons with the right CSS customization, et cetera. So her role being that almost everything goes through her allows us to have a cohesive brand that goes out to our consumers and having that consistent message and look and feel across all channels. I think the advice and the guidance there, if someone is looking for it, is that if you want to be brand led, you have to have that brand lead to make sure that someone has the capability of looking at all things across all channels and providing consistent, concise feedback to be able to say, hey, this over here doesn't look the same over here, so we want to make the changes.
Having no creative expertise whatsoever, I think one of the biggest challenge for creatives is taking what's in their head and putting it on paper in a way that other people can pick up on it. Because we've worked with some brands before where like internally they really struggle because it's all in one person's head and nobody else can seem to get it, because it isn't like they're not able to necessarily express what the brand is in like a print format, like your simple brand style guidelines or whatever it may be. So I think that is something that is really important coming from somebody who has no creative expertise whatsoever. Well, one last question before we hop off here. So I want to talk about culture. And with your experience, I'm not going to ask how important is it, because like obviously it's important, but what are some things that it's such a cliche question. What are some things that like you're doing to help build that culture in what is now a remote first environment? Because like for me, it was a lot easier when we were in person to have that culture. And now, especially with like our different departments and how quickly we've grown, it's difficult to integrate and have a company-wide culture. So like, what are some things that you've done in that respect?
Yeah, a few good questions in there. First to unpack the first one there about just from my experience, what's been the best scenario. I think that best scenario has been leading with transparency, which can mean a lot of things, right? It can be financial transparency, it can be strategic transparency, whatever it might be. But I think having everyone from the C-suite down to interns really understanding what's going on with the business, good or bad, to be frank, that to me, in my experience, has really led a positive culture, because then it provides that team mentality of we're all in this together and we celebrate our wins and we celebrate our losses, but we do it together. So transparency has always been big in my personal experience. As a coach and leader myself, I always really look to align culture with what an individual is passionate about with what the needs of the business are. And I think more often than not, you find the right person that's a culture fit, but maybe they don't have the right skill set, or maybe the person has the right skill set and they're not a culture fit. And I think being able to merge those two together and being able to say, this person might be the best fit for the position, for the job, but not the right position, and being able to say no to that individual, I think is really important. So making sure that you don't bring any bad apples into the tree farm, terrible metaphor, but we'll talk about that later. But just really understanding that the opportunity to bring the right person onto the team, even if they don't have the most appropriate skill set, skills can always be taught. I don't think that you can teach culture. So I think it's absolutely important to make sure that every individual, again, from C-suite to interns, make sure that they're a culture fit within the organization.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna have to take that away for some of our internal hiring practices. Well, listen, this has been really awesome, super insightful. I really appreciate you coming on and joining us. Before we hop off, can you let folks know where to find you, where to find Aura Bora?
Yeah, you can find Aura Bora very easy, aurabora.com, and make sure you follow all of our social channels. Most entertaining one is absolutely Instagram at Drink Aura Bora. Lots of memes, creativity, fun, and entertainment over there for sure. But thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, as always, this is Brandon Moroso. You can find me at brandonmoroso.com or electricmarketing.com. We'll see you all next time.